Been reviewing this collection a lot here, and usually giving pretty good reviews to it. The Universal Studios versions of Frankenstein, they're good movies. Today, we're looking at something a little different. Having watched, I believe, 3 Frankenstein films now, we're moving quite a ways along. However, any good legacy can become tainted. And we're back here again with Frankenstein's great aunt, Tillie. Yes, that is a movie that exists. It doesn't need to exist, but it does anyway. A movie having so little to do with the concepts in any version of Frankenstein that you could take out the Frankenstein monster from this film and change nothing. This movie has more to do with taxation, snake oil schemes, women's suffrage, and an automobile race than it does with the Frankenstein legacy. There's a lot to unpack with this one. I don't even know really where to begin. Other than the film stars Donald Pleasance and... What are you doing, man? Okay. Plot. Or what's passing for, pretending to be a plot in this film. So, this one is set 100 years after the events of Frankenstein. And, there's no other way to say it. This movie tries to be a comedy, but it's not funny. It does have some entertaining line reads at times, but it's more of a comedy than a horror film. But, it's set in the town of Mucklefugger Village. Yeah. Anyway, they're about to seize the Frankenstein castle due to back taxes. And as no heir has returned to claim it in over 100 years, well, they're going to do that, put up a factory, and the town council is going to set to make thousands. However, at about this time, Victor Frankenstein, played by Donald Pleasance, is returning to his ancestral seat with his great aunt, Matilda, or Tillie, and his wife / supermodel girlfriend, Randy. Anyway, they are coming there because Aunt Tillie wants to see the old estate again, as well as enter a car race using her steam-powered car. Now, Victor Frankenstein wants to go because all 3 of them are broke. He's a failed charlatan who keeps trying to... He's a con man who, though due to a message on a candy wrapper from his grandfather, he believes that there is a treasure there that the monster knows the way to. So, he wants to find the Frankenstein treasure. Aunt Tillie just wants to enter her car race. And that's where things get, I would say complicated, but convoluted's a better term. So, they return to the castle. Aunt Tillie loses her entry fee money paying the back taxes of an orphanage because she is a feminist activist who she's lost all her money due to orphans and other social justice causes in the past. This movie is 1984 and has is weirdly progressive and almost offensively at points. It tries to have a good message, but it goes circles back around so much on it that it almost comes off as frustrating. So it's complicated there. So she pays the back taxes from the to stave off the, as she puts it, evil men of the town council, and then begins getting involved in the ERA, Ermengarde Rights Again council, to get a woman's voice on the council. Spending more, which takes up a good chunk of the movie, is her crusade and a bunch of antics with the women now trying to wear bloomers instead of skirts and are attempting to pants the men, which is all fine. But this movie has so little in terms of actual plot. It has more of several random subplots of just messing with the town council, either Dr. Frankenstein trying to scam them to handle his back taxes, or Aunt Tillie both getting involved in the race to stick it to the man, as well as the women's suffrage part. It's a bunch of parallel plots that are running in kind of the same direction, but they almost never completely actually intersect. And Tillie herself isn't a bad character, but it's just such a strange one. Then her feminism part is fine, and actually, for the most part, is handled pretty well, though at points from her language, they almost paint her as if they're trying to make her somewhat unlikable, which is a little problematic, but for the most part, she is largely one of the main protagonists, though more on that later, I guess. Baron Victor Frankenstein is a happy-go-lucky, horny and hungry oaf, more than anything. He just wants to lounge about with his wife, who spends most of the movie in lingerie and very low-cut outfits, and half of his dialogue is about ordering Chinese food or getting more candy. Donald Pleasance, what happened? Why are you here in this role? Okay. So, the main thing is, how does the monster factor into all of this, I guess? The answer is barely. So Aunt Tillie was apparently around when Dr. Frankenstein raised the monster, and kind of hints that she may have even been behind the raising the monster himself, as Dr. Frankenstein may have been just as much of an oaf. But the notes have been lost, and however, due to some weird memory thing, whenever she's exposed to smoke, she sort of enters a trance and begins dictating what happened a long time ago. And so they try to recreate the experiment because the monster supposedly knows where the treasure's buried. Well, turns out the monster does, and just accidentally leads them to the fact that the castle is built over oil. And then the monster just wanders off. And is barely seen for the rest of the movie, other than the fact that the monster would be illegal, so they don't want to let them know that they raised the monster. But anyway, so the castle's sitting on oil, and Victor Frankenstein now wants to capitalize on that and sell the rights off to get rid of his debts. Or at least trick someone else into taking on his debts, as he is a con man. And shenanigans happens all around. The council, to try to get rid of Tillie, fronts her entrance fee money to try to cause an accident. But because she's the one who ends up winning the race, steam cars are now more in, which causes the oil prices to drop, and so the oil land is now worthless, causing Frankenstein to become more of a snake oil salesman. And there's a whole big to-do about legalities and paying the money back, and some of the backflips and rule bending that the council does would Well, make the GOP blush. Or take notes. Either way, it's over the top, backwards, and convoluted, and everything works out fine as Tillie decides to turn the castle into a home for wayward girls, leaving Victor Frankenstein to go back to peddling snake oil using the monster now that he's been found. But as long as he's gainfully employed, they're fine with the monster, so he's now an employee helping Hawk snake oil. Oh, if you've been paying attention to this review, and I don't blame you if you kind of faded in and out because this is a lot of random, I mentioned that this movie takes place 100 years later. But Tillie also was took down the dissertations of Dr. Frankenstein, meaning she's well over 100 years old despite looking in her 40s at worst. Then Victor Frankenstein looks older than Aunt Tillie, and despite her being his great aunt. This is answered just by the term royal jelly and is never brought up again. So apparently she's well over 100, doesn't look it because royal jelly. Moving along. Now, this movie could be fine if it played up its over-the-topness a little bit better. But it doesn't. This movie more comes off as boring rather than entertaining. This almost goes the route of young Frankenstein, but without the energy or the wit. Which is kind of a shame, because there's a lot here that could be very funny. Some of the scenes with them trying to get women's suffrage are entertaining. Them fleecing the police and heckling the council is decent. But the race is boring. Anything with the monster is boring. Anything about the Frankenstein himself is over the top and cartoonish, but they don't give him anything to do. So this movie's kind of a lost opportunity. There's some gems here that if polished, could have worked. But it doesn't. So Double Pleasance is trying his best, and he's entertaining, but a lot of the problems also stem from the audio, as it isn't very clear, and half the times you're struggling to hear what characters are saying, which ruins some punchlines. And how evil the council is entertaining at points. I mean, they're practically mustache-twirling, finger-tenting, excellent types, so there are elements that almost work, and that just makes the movie more disappointing when it doesn't. It's trying to do too many things in not a lot of time. The movie's only about an hour and 40. But despite that, at about the hour and 30-minute mark, everything's wrapped up. But then they decide to epilogue for 10 minutes on what happens with the monster, because at that point the monster had just wandered off, and no one seemed to mind or notice. So it feels both long and short at the same time. Long because of how much it's trying to cram into 140 minutes. Or, not 140 minutes, sorry. Then an hour and 40 minutes. But because there's so much going on, they don't focus on any of it. I mean, the race is barely shown, despite how much they're talking about it and bringing it up. Then Aunt Tillie bails out the orphanage. They vanish until the end of the movie. So a lot of things just don't go anywhere. Tillie's acting and the acting of the main three down-and-out Frankensteins is fine. The monster doesn't do anything, so there's nothing for him to do. They just walk around and occasionally pick things up. So I'm giving this one MacGuffin just because it's too dull to actually go anywhere. I mean, parts are, for an over-the-top comedy, it doesn't actually generate any of the laughs, and the movie just comes across as more pointless. Like, a lot of these plot lines could have been done with anything, and the fact that it just happens to be revolving around Frankenstein's castle and monster, you could take that out and do the entire same movie fine. So none of it meshes together. And that's the issues here. So if you want to see a weird Donald Pleasance experience, take a look. But otherwise, just avoid this one. It's not worth the time. So, despite the eyebrow-raising title of Frankenstein's great aunt Tillie, that's all it is a title to get you to watch the movie. It worked on me. Don't let it work on you. No. And today happens to be Valentine's Day, so this isn't really a Valentine's Day episode. I watched this movie on the 13th and was just too tired to record it. So, happy Valentine's Day.